Chapter 6. The First Encounter. It was the prayer of many for a safe voyage across the Atlantic, but safe and nice things weren't of much interest to a 12 and 13-year-old boy. There were no great sea battles, no chases with pirates. There'd been a measly storm or two, but never a sea monster. And save for training daily with the sergeant, there wasn't much to mark the trip by, other than one fantastic moment. Land! Whistling rope pulleys lifted the workboats, the rowboats, to the side of the ship and brought them down over the gemstone waters below. Marcel, now 2 months older and well-knit from his training, watched as the shadow of each boat hovered and shrank until squeaking wood met crystal waves. And the crew, piled in like baskets of berries, rowed for shore as if wreath and metal waited for each of them on the sand. It was Marcel's turn. He balanced a foot onto a workboat and threw down his bundle and bow. "Just think, Tristan. In a few moments, we'll be on land again, and we can go hunting." "I'd settle for catching a squirrel at this point," said Tristan, talking through a mouthful of dry crumbs. "I don't want to eat another biscuit for the rest of my life. 2 months of these things is enough for me." Marcel smirked. "That's when you're supposed to be glad it wasn't 3 months." "It probably would have been," said Tristan, climbing aboard the small craft, "if we had a lesser captain in some other ship. But we had Captain Ribault and his La Trinity, and Captain says we just completed the fastest voyage ever recorded to the New World, and the course he charted is going to be France's best-kept secret from now on." "Scoot over, boys," said the sergeant. "We gotta make room for this." His hairy arms set down a wooden chest into the workboat. There was a jangle coming from within, as if silver cutlery or pieces of gold, and its hatch was sealed with a lock. Tristan tucked the box underfoot and gave it a couple stomps with his heel. "So what's in it? A bunch of treasure?" "Something like that," said the sergeant with a smirk. Marcel weighed the hefty lock in his palm. "What are we going to do with it, Sergeant? Bury it?" "No," said the sergeant. "We're going to trade with it." The boys looked at each other with puzzled frowns. "Trade? Trade with who?" "Why, the natives, of course." He slipped out a key from his belt and threw off the lock. "We'll need something to greet them with, and these just might do the trick in making friends out of foes." He gave the boys a peek inside. There were squares of silk, a decent amount of jewelry, small hatchets, knives, and other tools. There were hand mirrors wrapped in burlap, ornate cups, and bowls as well, and even more they couldn't quite see. But certainly none of it was anything a couple of boys would call treasure. Tristan furrowed his brow. "You sure they're going to want all this junk?" The sergeant laughed. "Some of these things you've gotten too used to is all. You've grown to take them for granted." He picked out a silver fork from the depths of the chest. "This might seem ordinary to you, but to the native who's never seen one before, it's a wonder from our world. In the same way, he might have pearls, precious stones, or unique things that you and I could never dream of owning in France. And to him, it's just junk to give away." He closed the lid. "Huh!" Tristan scrunched his lips and nodded. Marcel and the sergeant helped steady the workboat as other crew members packed in, thicker than smoke in a chimney. The close quarters and the spring heat invited every drop of perspiration their bodies could surrender. Armor was completely out of the question, save for the sergeant, still donning his breastplate and helmet, even as it began to burn to the touch. As for the other men, their shirts were caked to their backs, as if soaked from fresh rain. But the only thing fresh was a tartness coming from the armpits, enough to sting the eyes into tears. Marcel wiped his forehead with little use. All it did was mingle the sweat of his arm with the salty dew of his brow. A hot day in France is one thing, but this is more like a brick wall hitting you in the face," added Tristan. He unlaced the drawstrings about the neck of his shirt, frantically pulling at the cords as if the very collar was on fire. "I didn't know sweating this much was even possible." Marcel slumped back and raised a hand. "Anybody else feel like a wet rag wrung out and kicked across the floor? 'Cause I do." The rowers chuckled to themselves, the sergeant among them. The boys were just shouting out loud what everybody else was too proud to admit. The first obstacle of the adventure, the humidity, whipped a beating more fearsome than any run-in with a Spanish galleon. "All right, boys," said the sergeant. "Who's going to be the first to hit the shore?" One spoke over the other. "Me! Me!" "Let's see you race for it, then." The sergeant snuck a wink to the other rowers. "Winner gets bragging rights and a bar of soap." Marcel scrunched his nose. "Soap?" "Oui, soap. Now both of you up to the front and get ready." The boys didn't waste a breath. They shot up and stumbled their way through the rowers and climbed up to the tip of the workboat. Tristan shoved, and Marcel shouldered back, but each in a brotherly spirit, of course. "Hold your position!" The waters fell shallow. Sand was just visible beneath the waves, and the beach was dead ahead. "On your mark!" The boys made ready to pounce. Each propped his falcons on a citadel. "Get set!" The workboat hit shore with a thud. "Go!" The youths leaped from the boat and soared over the last of the waves, but their feet touched neither water nor sand, and they moved neither forward nor backward. Were they flying in midair? No, the sergeant was holding them up by the back of the pants. Marcel yelped. "Hey!" Tristan kicked about. "Let go! That's not fair, Papa!" "When was the last time you boys had a bath?" A roar of laughter came around as the sergeant dropped the pair of youths into the shallows. "Looks like a tie to me, Sergeant," said one of the crew. "They both win," said another. "Throw in their prize and let 'em fight for it." Marcel rose to the surface. There was a twinkle in his eyes. He spit out an arc of seawater straight into the sergeant's face. "Why, you little rascal, come here!" But it was just a diversion. Tristan came up behind and pulled the sergeant underwater. It was enough for everyone in the boat to declare a water war. They tackled one another into the shallows, while others found the oars to be great weapons for splashing. It takes a whole lifetime to get old, but only a moment to become childlike again. As for the sergeant, he gurgled for help beneath the waves. Though the water was only knee-deep, he was in armor after all, and having fallen over, he might as well have been strapped to an anchor. The boys quickly rescued the helpless man, but after a few raspy coughs, his head went limp and fell forward. Tristan leaned in. Papa? You all right?" "Boo!" The sergeant awoke in a surprise attack. He wrestled the boys into the waves and captured each of them under an arm. Together, the three of them wobbled onto shore as they tripped face first into sand and foam, heaving for breath between belly laughs. Their amusement only grew louder the more they looked around, for there was a new spectacle on the shore. Grown men fumbled about like babies learning to walk, with their sea legs too used to the swaying of a ship and the pulsing creak of woodboards. After the gear was unloaded, the boys trudged off with a youthful bounce, farther into dry land. "Not too far now," barked the sergeant, "and keep a sharp eye out for the natives." Barefoot again, back to nature again, the boys leaped over tropical shrubs and swung around colossal pines. Wild things they were, stampeding through palm and fern. Ah, Florida! Marcel breathed in the spring forest and unleashed a boisterous howl to the ancient treetops. It stirred up the sparrow songs into a frenzy and upset the delicate afternoon of the gray doves pecking about. Satisfied with his echo and all the disturbance he had caused, the boy unstrapped his quiver and bow and flung forward into a handstand. The upside-down world was a fresh view all to himself, or so he thought, until there came the rustling of a branch and the snapping of a twig. Marcel flipped over. He landed on his back with a thud and head-rolled his way to his pack and gear. He snatched up his bow and threaded an arrow, aiming from this bush to that. But there was nothing. That's strange. He could have sworn he had heard something. From the veil of greenery came a bird call, but Marcel could tell it was no bird. Then came a holler, and then a growl. Was it behind that tree, or was it this one? Hard to say, but one thing was for sure. Someone was messing with him. "Tristan? That you?" "Not me," he said from behind. "I'm right here." Marcel swung back. Tristan was indeed a ways behind, but now his ruddy face was as pale as a cloud and as nervous as a seagull. Marcel, slowly walk toward me, and whatever you do, don't—" A tap-tap to the shoulder bid Marcel to do exactly what Tristan feared he would. He turned around. "Ah!" the boy screamed. It was the natives. Marcel tripped on his own two heels and fell to the earth. Desperately, he scooted backward through the crumpled leaves and prickly pine needles as the warriors inched closer, towering above him. Warrior after warrior, they lurched into the clearing, squeezing Tristan's path toward Marcel's. He quickly helped his friend to his feet, and both boys found themselves at a room. They stood up, back to sweaty back, as the encircling natives, at least 24 now, tightened in closer. And uncomfortably closer. Marcel cried out, "Help!" But Tristan had smothered his mouth shut. "What'd you do that for?" Tristan knocked on the boy's skull. "Use your head. You call the others over here like that, and they'll just as soon blow these natives to smithereens. How do we know if we're in danger? What if this is just how these people say hello?" "Yeah," Marcel nodded with a poor excuse for a grin. "Maybe they just want to talk, right?" The warriors were a whole head taller than any men the boys had ever seen. They were olive-skinned, lean, and rippled with muscle. The lengths of their hair, black as the night sky, were tied up in top knots, and if not for the animal skin loincloths about their waists, they would be adorned only by their tattoos, which decorated them with inky shapes and patterns from head to toe. The warriors seemed amused at the boys' fright. One reached out an immense hand for Marcel's neck, while another native grabbed Tristan by the shoulder. The boys winced. The men's grip was firm, but unmenacing, and the natives seemed to show no ill will, though they fanned the air and pinched their noses at the stench of 2 sweaty French boys. As the two held still, the natives brushed the linen of Tristan's shirt and prodded at his wiry golden hair. They studied the craftsmanship of Marcel's bow and admired the iron tips of his arrows, passing them out from his quiver one by one. "Hey, those are mine!" Then something unexpected happened. A youth came forward from among the warriors. The right side of his face was riddled with claw scars, and the round of his left ear had been shattered into nasty, jagged nicks, likely chewed up in battle by some toothy beast. He couldn't have been much older than the boys, and unlike the men, his tattoos were few and far between. Perhaps the rest of the ink had yet to be earned. The youngster pointed to his left ear, his good ear, and made some comment about himself, which the boys guessed was his name. Left Ear then presented Marcel with a native arrow and shoved it toward the boy's chest. At the same time, the young warrior took one of Marcel's arrows, one of the iron-tipped ones, and held it toward himself. All eyes were on this strange interaction. Marcel wasn't sure what was happening. He just kept staring blankly at the 2 arrows, while the young native repeated the gesture, again and then again. "I think Left Ear is trying to trade with you," said Tristan. "What should I do?" "Well, if you like what he's offering, trade." "Oh," Marcel scratched his head, staring down at the odd arrow in front of him. Its shaft was made out of some kind of cane. 3 splotchy turkey feathers were its vanes, and its arrowhead was a hard diamond-shaped fishbone. "Guess I never had an arrow like this before." And he accepted. The trade was met with a satisfactory sigh from the circle of warriors, which then turned quickly into a whole commotion to see what Left Ear could get next. The boys played along and searched their pockets. They swapped some fishing line for a necklace, beaded expertly with smooth round shells. Marcel ripped off a pant button, prized for how it caught the light, for a pebbled armband. Tristan even traded his shirt for a reed-hilt knife bladed with flint, as good or perhaps better than Marcel's own hunting knife. "Well, Marcel," Tristan turned his pockets inside out, "I've got nothing left to trade with except my own pants, and I'm not giving those up." "And I don't want to give up my bow," said Marcel, "but I'm scared of what'll happen if we stop giving Left Ear the things he wants." "Yeah, me too," said Tristan. Then it hit Marcel. "Hey, I just remembered. The sergeant's got that big box of stuff." "You see," said Tristan, "I knew you could use that head of yours." "Merci, I think. But wait, how are we going to get him to follow us back to the beach?" "I've got an idea," said Tristan. Language would be of little use to either party, but being kids, and therefore natural problem solvers, the boys accompanied their speech with hand signs and gestures. It worked perfectly as long as Marcel and Tristan chose not to overthink it, for they kept one thing in mind which made communicating with Left Ear simple and easy. He was a kid the same as them. He just so happened to be from somewhere else, was all. "Water," sighed Tristan. Come with us to water. We have men, tall, and they will give you more things. Left Ear discussed the message with the other warriors, and having come to an agreement, he signed back. We will come to water. We will come with all our warriors. We will bring our great one, and he will meet your tall men face to face. Tristan's eyes popped from his face, but before he could reply, Left Ear pounded a fist to his heart and bowed out. Together, he and the other natives quickly disappeared into the thick of the forest. The boys found themselves alone in the clearing, as if no one else had been there at all. So, Marcel looked at Tristan, who's going to explain this to the sergeant? Me? Or you?